Hi, welcome back to the cloud learning series using the CloudMart application. So we have set up the Spring Boot backend before. Now it's time to set up the front end. So as you see on the screen, this is the required folder structure required for the front end. So we need this components folder and this pages folder. So before that we use White. So White is actually a front end build tool that helps to create and run the front end applications. So let me go ahead and do that. So I'm in the CloudMart frontend folder. So it has this CloudMart UI. Let me run to view. So it asks us two details. Oh, sorry, not install, it's actually create. Select React, select the variant as JavaScript, and let's start with the installation now. So what we are doing here, so it is a front-end build tool. It helps us to create a front-end application. So like React and Vue. So it has some features like, whenever you add a code, it automatically refreshes the browser and it reflects in the UI. So it has given us a boilerplate application that is running. Just quickly take a look at this. Like it actually started running the application on port number 5173. So let's go ahead and see this application in the browser. So let me open this in the browser. So we have localhost 5173. So if you look at this, it actually updated by the White. So we have this White related front end page. So this is the index.html that got loaded, but we need as the required folder structure. On top of it, we have to update the code as per our requirements. So we have to update this folder structure. Let me go ahead and add all these required folder structure and files quickly. So I've just added the required folders and the files. So I've created this API folder. I've created this components folder, and I've also created the pages and the required code. So I've just added the files, but I'm not added code for all the things. So I've updated products list.jsx file. So there is another one under the pages. We have these three files created. I've also added .env file. We need, so as soon as I also updated the app.jsx file. So it actually imports this product list and also that app.css file. So I've updated all the files. Let's go ahead and look into each file quickly. So if you look at this API client.js file, so this is actually, if you look at the first line, it is actually importing the Axios. So we have to actually install that. So before we run the actual npm commands, let's quickly go through this. So it is importing Axios is basically an API endpoint. It connects to the backend. So after installing the Axios, so this npm knows to use it. So this file specific to this, actually it creates a reusable component. So it imports that one and it actually uses the API client. It creates an API client and it uses the backend URL for White API base URL. So it refers to the environment variable. We have not yet updated the .env file. So we have to update the .env file with the value of this. So it actually refers this White API base URL from the .env file, and then it uses that for calling that backend API. So let's just add that .env file. Let's update that. So .env should have this White API base URL. This is actually, if you remember, 8080. So this is where the backend running. So we are providing that backend API URL to connect to that. So let's save this file and let's look into this products list.jsx file now. So this product list.jsx file, so this is a component added. So it is a React component file which actually makes a call to the backend API. So it gets the list of, so this actually calls to API, backend API. Like if you look at this, it further uses the API client that we have just added before. So it pulls out the products list. So it will get the list of products, and it also stores those products in the state. So apart from pulling it, it actually loads that. So use effect is something, it is helpful to load that products list from that page, from the page and display, like from the database, and it lists that on the page. So this is very important to understand. So use effect actually loads the components, loads the component, and then it actually makes a call to the database endpoint to get the product list, and it displays that products here on the page. So now let's look into the app.jsx file I've just updated. So it actually looks, if you look at the code, it actually takes the product list from the components. So this is actually works or like acts as a main component, like a container that actually loads the component called the products list, and it actually displays the data from the database that it has received, and it shows this product list on the page. So there is another file called app.css, which is for styling. So we don't need to dig into it much for now. But these are the three important files that we need to have some understanding. That is API client.js and the product list.jsx and the app.jsx. So let's go ahead and run this so we can see how it actually looks in the UI. Let me run npm install. So we have to go to that folder, CloudMart UI, npm install. So it installed the required packages. It seems that I've already ran before. So it is now says that 31 packages are updated. So there is another thing, like it actually uses the Axios. Let's install that. So Axios, again, it's a JavaScript library. So it is used to make a call to backend APIs from the front end. So front end uses this Axios library to make a call to backend APIs, so that it actually fetches the HTTP request, like the API products, API/products, API/products ID. So whatever the API calls that we have defined in the backend, this front end Axios library is responsible to get that, make that HTTP call and get the list of those API calls. So now let's run the application using the command npm run dev. So now it started the application back again. So we should see the updated code and the updated page in the front end. So let me go back to the browser, CloudMart UI. Let me refresh. It auto refreshed as soon as I added the code. So it simply now shows CloudMart. It's an e-commerce application, and it is actually showing the products list. So this, the product list we see here, it's actually fetched from the database, and it is displaying the products from the database, and it is displaying it on the page. So we are good. The flow of execution is working. So it actually makes a call to backend application. Backend application fetches the data from the database, and the database and the response given back to the UI, and UI actually displaying the list of products in the products table. So before we see or update anything further, I would like to discuss few things here. So we actually ran npm install and npm install Axios, and also then we actually started the application using npm run dev. So let's look into that, what's happening. So whenever we run this npm install, it installs the dependencies required for the project. So to install those dependencies, it refers to the file called package.json. So even when we run npm run dev, it also refers to package.json and look at the script, what it needs to be executed, and then it follows that, and it spins up the application, and it shows us in the UI. So we are talking about the package.json. So when we run the npm commands, it is actually referring to this file. And what exactly is this file? So package.json is the main configuration file for a Node.js based applications, or like front-end JavaScript based projects. So we can think this as of like pom.xml that we have discussed in the previous videos related to Spring Boot application. So how the pom.xml being used with the Maven by Maven. So Maven refers to pom.xml to understand what to execute. Similarly, package.json. So whenever we run the npm commands, it refers to the package.json, and it gets the understanding like what is a project name and what dependencies are needed and what scripts to be executed and all. So let's look into that in detail. So again, there are like it is again divided into multiple sections. Let's see like different things. So if you look at this one, it shows us the project information. It tells the project information, or we can actually configure the project information here. So the name is CloudMart UI and the version we are using it currently, it is actually shows as 000. So this defines the project metadata. So there is another section called scripts. So if you look at the scripts, so scripts basically shortcuts. So when we run npm run dev, so when we run that npm run dev, so it actually comes and refers this under the scripts and dev. So it says white, so it executes that white. So internally executes this white. There is another section called dependencies. So this is where we define the packages. So these are the required packages by the application during the runtime. So whenever we run that commands, it actually refers this dependencies section. So npm install particularly, npm install command actually come and take a look at these dependencies and install that. So there is another thing, dev dependencies here. So same thing like dependencies, but this is very specific to development environment. So to understand it better way, like whenever you run npm install, it reads the package.json, it comes and verify this dependencies list, and it executes and installs those dependencies. We see another file called package log.json. So what happens when you run it for the first time, you won't see that, but if there is package.json, so if this exists and when we run the npm install, it actually refers to package.log.json. So npm uses it to install the exact version of the packages. For example, if you see in the regular package.json file, we have the dependencies. If you take an example of Axios here, it says 1.17.0, and you remember this, like take a look at this cap that we have used. So what this means, so before we understand package.log.json better way, we have to first understand one thing here. So in the package.json, we have the dependencies listed here. So let me show this one. So what happens whenever you see in this kind of flag in the dependencies list, what it means, so npm tries to install the latest version available in one. So it actually refers to this, remember this 1.x.x. So if Axios there is an available, like let's say for example this 1.19.1 is available in its package for the Axios, it actually installs that particular package. So it actually installs the latest version of package available for the Axios, but within the 1.x.x, but not 2.x.x, for example. So similarly, there would be another thing, like we don't have it as a reference, but if there is anything like in place of cap, if there is anything with this symbol, for example 1.17.0, so it strictly follows the 1.17 and then anything after that, whatever the latest version available in the package manager. So but not 1.18.0. So this won't be there. So it actually refers to make sure that it is 1.17. Anything latest package available, it uses that one. If the symbol is this one, and if it is a cap symbol, it strictly install the latest packages available as per this version 1.x.x, but not 2.x.x. So keeping this in mind, so what npm does when you install, it refers to the package.json and it will also update the package.log.json file. So it will strictly have the exact version that it has used. So it resolves that and it will create a long file, and every time in subsequently whenever we run npm install, it actually refers to package.log.json and look at the different exact versions that it is actually using, and it tries to install that exact versions of that packages. So now what happens? So while it actually downloads the packages, it will keep those files under node modules. So we should see something called node modules folder here. So these are all the packages that is installed. under the node modules. So whenever you run that install, it actually pulls and install all those dependencies and keep it in under node underscore modules folder. So these are the packages downloaded here, and it will stay in this node underscore modules. So if you look into the package log JSON again, so here we have given only 3 dependencies, and there are other few dependencies if it is a dev environment. But if you look at the node underscore modules folder, there are a lot of other dependencies too. There are a lot of different packages have been installed. So this is called basically a transitive dependencies. So whenever there are packages installed, these packages that we are using here may depend on the other packages too. So for example, if you take an Axios, we are installing Axios package, but that package may depend on the other package. Again, those packages again may depend on the other packages. So it's a chain of dependencies it may require. So it is called, like we call it as indirected dependencies. So as per our requirement, we may use the required package, but those packages can depend on different packages too. So that all gets installed and will be updated and added into this node underscore modules folder. So one other important note to keep, basically this node underscore modules. So we do not commit this to the Git. Usually we do not push to GitHub repository because it is very large. So of course, whenever the other developer wants to run this, whenever they run locally npm install, it again downloads this all things, and it will create this node modules folder, and the required dependencies will be installed locally in their machine or in the other developer machine. But at the same time, we no need to actually push this code to the repository. Now we've just discussed about npm install, but let's see, we have also ran another command called npm run dev. So what happens? So when we run that npm run dev, so it also refers the package.json, but not package.json. It actually refers only the package.json. And you see this script section. So it knows it refers to the script section in package.json. And when we run npm dev, it is actually referred this particular command called write, and it executed that one. So hope you have got some understanding, but this understanding is very important for further videos, for further development of the application. Now another thing, let's discuss quickly about the .env file too. So in the .env file, we have actually added the white API base URL, that is the backend URL of the API backend URL that is running on 8080 port number. So why we need this .env file? So because again, this is a configuration changes, like when the configuration related to the application environment to environment, it changes. So we will separate that configuration and we'll keep it in .env file. So during the runtime, the npm uses these files and it knows actually what to run on and what is the required configuration. So we can think this as of like application.yaml file that we have discussed during the backend, Spring backend, how that Spring actually uses that application.yaml during the runtime. Similarly here, the npm actually uses this .env file during the runtime. So for example, if you look at this API client.js, so it is actually importing the .env file, this specific value. So another thing to keep in mind that basically this .env values will be loaded whenever the application server started. So whenever we run this npm run dev, it actually load that .env file, and further it will use the values defined in the .env configuration file. So since anyhow we have discussed about the npm install npm run dev, so there is another command. Let's quickly understand that one as well. So npm run build. So whenever we run that npm run build, so it also refers to the package.json. For example here, so this build, so it has this npm run build, right? So it now comes and verify which command to be executed. So it is actually a white build. So the difference between build and runtime, basically, so whenever we execute this build, so it just creates the folder structure, like it creates a folder, output folder that is very production ready. So it creates a folder called dist. So we can compare this again with the Java, as like whenever you create a Java, it creates a folder called target, if you know that. So it also creates the jar file and it will place the jar file and the required associated files in the target folder. Similarly here also it just creates this folder production ready files and it also keep that in the dist folder. So I recommend you to explore more about that, even though we have not executed that run build here, but try to get the understanding how it works when it is npm run build and npm run dev. So let's revise it again. So more than the application flow of execution, we discussed more about the npm build and npm run, npm install, and what is exactly the .env file. So this basic understanding about the application, how it works, so it helps us to further make the changes on top of the existing code. So whenever there is a new features needs to be added, we will get some idea on how that all works together. So let me show you the other screen. So let me see. Okay, so let's understand this npm install workflow quickly. So whenever you run the npm install, it reads the package.json file and it also reads the package log.json file. It resolves that dependencies with the exact version referring to the package log.json file. It downloads the packages and install those dependencies. So it also installs the transitive dependencies, means like the indirect repositories that is required by the global packages. So it creates the node underscore modules folder and then project is ready. Let's also quickly take a look at the npm run dev, what we have discussed. So npm run dev, whenever you run the npm run dev, it reads the package.json file. It finds the exact script what it needs to run. So we have this dev-white in our package.json. So it actually imports the look at the node underscore modules package, whether the packages are there. So it starts the server. So we have seen that it actually started the application on port number 5173. So underneath, actually how that actually works, whenever that white command got executed, from the code point of view, it actually reads the index.html file, so which will point to source.main.jsx file, and that main.jsx file loads app.jsx file. We know that again backend in the backend, so that actually refers to product list component, and that product list component has this Axios which makes a call to the backend, and that backend returns the products list, and that product list again displayed by the React on the browser. So the complete flow. So again it installs the dependencies. We ran the npm run dev, then it started the front end application. While starting the application, it loaded the .env configuration and it makes a call to the backend application, and it just got the data from the products data from the database and it displayed in the UI. That is what we have seen here. So this is a flow of execution. So very particular to .env. So to have some better understanding, so .env is a configuration file. In our example, we have used this value. Whenever API client.js file loaded, it actually imported the .env value from this. So it actually make a call to products list.jsx file. So we have the API client defined here to make a call to this API./products. And then the final call will be like this. So we make a call to the backend application which is running on 8080 or the specific API called API/products. It makes a call to Spring Boot application. So whenever Spring Boot application, if you remember, it gets the request. The product controller is the one it receives the API request. So it handles that API call, and then it makes a call to product service. The product service make a call to product repository, and the product repository is responsible to make a call to database and get the data. So it gets the JSON response back, and once the UI gets the response back, it displays in the browser. So this is a layered architecture we have discussed previously in the Spring backend, but the complete end-to-end flow from the UI to backend to database and getting response back to the UI and displaying that is the exact flow it happens. So enough for this video. So we will see again, we'll update the code. So currently we are seeing a plain text, very simplistic application here, UI interface here, which loads the product data. In next video, we will update this code to more graphical view. We'll update the app.css file and app.jsx file so that it displays a good application that reflects in as like in the real time. And also we'll see it's listing the products list. We'll make a test saying that like we'll update one product in the database, so that we should see that is reflecting here in the UI. See you in the next video.